I started on it about 7 years ago. It was maybe a page or two, very rough draft, and sort of just left it at that. We would talk every now and then, but nothing really came of it. Once I moved to Colorado 2 years ago, I decided that I was going to get this film made, so I really started diving into it and completing the script. So out of all of my stories, this one I would say was the easiest to produce, the cheapest by far. I wanted to let this one be the launch pad, so to speak, for establishing a brand. That was the idea for everyone, is to establish a brand. During the casting, that was one of the first things I looked for. Initially, the posting I did said this is going to be an ethnic movie, but in Colorado, where it's like 3% black, it really wasn't happening. And the other thing is, I said it was a non-paid job. That was the expectation I set. Afterwards, I did pay them what I could, but initially the idea was this is a non-paying job, and for people who are serious about getting into the business. I, for one, did not want to wait for my ship to come in. I wanted to build my own ship and go go to the promised land. And I was looking for like-minded people, and I was very fortunate to find 8 people who did have that same sensibility to want to establish their brand and get into this business. We're all first-time actors, well, for the most part. I believe a lot of them had theater, but I think Micah and Maya were the only 2 that actually have film experience. But as far as making a feature film, I think we were all new to it. I wouldn't change anything. It was a great learning experience. It was tough. I can tell you can't prepare enough. No matter how much you prepare, something is going to go wrong. But fortunately, there were enough things in place to make it happen. We had the blueprint, and we had talented people who were willing to work with me, and we all just kind of put our talents and skills and abilities together and made this what I believe is a beautiful film that's going to turn some heads. So one piece of advice I would give to anyone who wants to make films is learn to edit. If you don't do anything else, learn to edit. Of course, it helps to know how to use a camera and everything, but in this experience, I would say 150,000% editing has been the biggest obstacle. Is like this. So let's say I go to you and I say, I want you to record a video of 2 chickens crossing the road from east to west playing Yankee Doodle in the background, right? Simple enough. And during that process, I want to be there in the room while you're making the changes, because I want to ensure that it's my vision, right? And a lot of times working with the editors, it was like, well, chickens are okay, but flamingos are prettier. Why do you want them walking east to west? Why not north to south? And what about this kind of music and things? And I like hearing ideas, but at the end of the day, I want my vision up there. That's going to be the final product, right? The expectation was to have the film recorded in May and the editing done in June, have the film done by July. Unfortunately, it didn't work out that way. At this point, I've learned how to edit myself. Of course, I'm not all that experienced, but I'm getting there. So the initial cinematographer, director of photography, had a great eye for detail and great eye for artistry. But kind of like the editing scenario that I mentioned, there were problems there. I couldn't get my hands on the raw footage, which I feel shouldn't have even been up for discussion, but there were problems getting my raw footage to see what works, what didn't work, what needed to be reshot. And basically, over 3 days, we shot an average of 4 scenes a day. And it wasn't going to be done in time for the job. It was like a baker that only makes cupcakes, right? Good cupcakes, they're tasty, they look good, all of the above, right? And let's say I go to this baker and I say, I need you to make me a 4-layer wedding cake, right? And not only that, once again, I want to be in the room while you do it. And it may have seemed like a good idea, but like I said, at 4 scenes a day, we weren't going to get it done in the time we needed it done in. So with those issues in mind, I sent an email. I mean, there was a lot of back and forth emails, but I sent an email basically saying, I'm going to get someone who's more experienced in the field. You're welcome to sit in, see how they work, and then from there we can go forward with how we are going to work, in the future. And they had declined. And I said, so what do we need to close the deal? Because I'm going to go with another cinematographer for the reasons I've mentioned. And it was 10 scenes in all. And for the first 8 scenes, she said $1,000 would cover everything. For the last 2 scenes, the ones that were done at the gym, the one with Brevin, the scenes with Brevin, and the scenes done at Julian's house, right? So to get the stuff that was done at Julian's house was $1,000, friend price or whatever. But once I said what I said about going with someone else, she wanted another $1,000 for those last 2 scenes. And Isaiah, I flew him in from Texas. He's like my son, and I really wanted him to be in it. And I just didn't want to go take that risk of going through everything again, because the cast, everything was rolling, and people had other priorities going forward. So I had to bite that bullet. And obviously it left a sour taste in my mouth. So anyway, I was looking for a new director of cinematography and found 1010 Studios. And he said he had 27 years of experience, which was obviously a desirable skill. And so we went ahead. Unfortunately, he couldn't start that day, so we lost a day in shooting. But for the next 2 days, they really cranked them out. It was Tony and Brian for most of the time, and sometimes they had to work by themselves. But yeah, we got 8 to 10 scenes done a day once we started rolling. And once that was done, there was the editing process. And when I first hired him, I told him, I want to be in the room, I'm very hands-on, it's got to be my vision, blah, blah, blah. Lo and behold, same situation. They have their own ideas of how the scripts was envisioned. I have the raw footage, and I know what files and timestamps and things like that, so it should move things along easier. As far as the trailers and extras and stuff like that, I just said I'm going to do that stuff going forward, because learn how to edit. The reason why I wrote this story was because I felt like I wanted to empower people, you know? I wanted to give people weapons, verbal weapons, for situations like that: homosexuality, atheism. I don't know. I think those are the main two issues there. And somebody's sexual past, things like that. Those are very uncomfortable conversations, and a lot of times people lose them or walk out on them because they don't know what to say. And I don't always know what to say either, but I wanted to empower. I wanted to empower people in that way, and also get some dialogue started. You know, just to get people talking, and see if there's a common ground that we all can reach. That I advertised it through Backstage it just is an awesome casting tool. I advertised through Backstage and I said it was a ethnic film, but once I saw what was available to me, it challenged me to make the story fit what was available. And so initially, of course, everyone was black, right? And the story was a lot more ratchet, a lot more, maybe not ratchet, but more tongue in cheek, more explicit, things like that. But I'm really happy with the evolution of this story because it challenged me, like I said, to be a better writer and to listen to people's ideas. Every single one of them had input on the characters that they worked with and the story as a whole. Everyone brought something special to the table. They asked great questions or made great suggestions. Of course, I couldn't take everyone's suggestions, but as you'll see, it was great to work with like-minded people and just bounce ideas off of each other. In the future, I do hope to work with them all again at some point. But I would also like to work with new talent as well, and I want them to work with other people. Because, like I told them, I hope this is their worst experience making a film. I mean, it wasn't horrible, but as far as setting a bar, I hope it never gets worse for them or for me making a film. I know for me it's not going to get worse. It's only going to get better. I'm just, going to keep learning and applying those lessons to make a better product. And yeah, I hope they do the same thing. Just working with actors who identify that as their craft. I like to give them that freedom to interpret the characters the way that they view it, but at the same time, I do want certain things to come across. And I think casting is important in that sense, because the script is important, but it can only do so much. The person reading those lines, they have to convey certain things. A certain energy has to come out, a certain emotion. And if you cast the right person who can relate to that character, then it makes it easier to bring it from the paper to reality. Micah D. Thomas. Micah is a force of nature. Initially, he didn't put in for the part. I had to search for him and find him. When I was doing the search, there were a few, not a lot, just like 2 or 3 people that I reached out. When I saw Micah, and I was like, yeah, this kid has a great look. And then I saw pictures of him, like screenshots or stills of him in another film where he was like crying. And I was like, oh, wow, this guy is serious about his craft. And I didn't think I would get him, I was like, yeah, he's probably going to want money and I'm not going to be able to get him. But I, took my shot, put it out there, and, asked him, and he was all too excited to get on board. And it was awesome. It was like jolt of energy, I already had a spark, but when he came along, it was like adding gasoline. I mean, it made it even hotter. I remember asking him. I asked them all. It's like, is there anything, any type of talent or skill that you want to display that you haven't had an opportunity to? And he was like, man, I'm always playing the love interest, but I never get to show my body. I want to show my body. Yeah, so I was like, all right, man, let's see what we can come up with. And he already had a boxing background, and I have a martial arts background. So, yeah, we hit it off really quickly. We hit it off really quickly, and it's like we've known each other for years.